When I bought my first house, I thought the scariest part would be signing the mortgage papers. It was a modest two-bedroom home on the outskirts of Milwaukee, quiet street, white fence, nothing fancy but mine. After years of renting and saving, the sound of the keys jingling in my hand felt like victory. Fresh paint, new locks, boxes labeled in black marker. I remember walking through each empty room, breathing in that sharp mix of dust and hope, thinking, this is what peace feels like. The first few days were all about setup, utilities, furniture, curtains that didn't quite fit. Everything was routine until the mail started arriving. Most of it was dull, welcome packets, bills, ads, but 2 or 3 envelopes stood out. They were addressed to someone named Lorraine Hensley. I figured she'd been the previous owner, so I wrote, "Return to sender," and dropped them back in the mailbox. But they kept coming, handwritten, no return address, the same shaky penmanship every time. One afternoon, curiosity got the better of me. The envelope wasn't sealed, only tucked closed. I hesitated, then slid it open. Inside was a single sheet of paper with 6 words. "Don't let him back inside." That was it. No greeting, no signature. I stared at the sentence, trying to decide if it was angry, scared, or both. I shredded it, assuming it was leftover drama from whoever lived here before me. The next day, another letter came. It said, "Jean is not allowed." The name sent a chill through me. It didn't sound like gossip, it sounded like a warning. Within a week, I had a stack of envelopes, each with some variation of the same message. Curiosity turned to unease. I called the local property records office. The clerk confirmed Lorraine had rented the place for 7 years before moving out. No forwarding address, no extra notes. "Probably landlord trouble," he said casually. But that night, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't finished here. Instinct took over. I fired twice toward the muzzle flash. A grunt answered back, and 2 shadows scattered into the field. I bolted for my truck, bullets snapping past, gravel kicking at my boots. I dove into the cab, slammed the door, and floored it, the roar of the engine drowning everything else. In the rearview mirror, one figure stood motionless in my headlights before melting into the night. But what scared me most wasn't the attack. It was the thought that maybe, just maybe, they hadn't been human at all. By the time I reached the faint glow of a gas station miles down the road, my hands wouldn't stop shaking. I pulled in, parked beneath the flickering lights, and just sat there, staring at my reflection in the cracked windshield. My heart was still racing, my throat dry as sandpaper. I thought I'd escaped whatever that was on the highway. I thought wrong. Dispatch had already confirmed my call. They said a sheriff's unit was en route to the location I'd reported, the abandoned semi near River. I didn't go back. Couldn't. Instead, I sat there until dawn, the neon buzzing above me, every shadow outside the cab twitching like it was alive. The next morning, I found myself sitting in a small sheriff's substation in Casper. The place smelled of old coffee and dust. My hands still trembled as I filled out the incident report, the pen scraping unevenly across the paper. The officers listened politely, but I could see the look in their eyes, the same one I'd seen back in Iraq when someone reported something too strange to believe. Finally, one of them leaned back and asked, "You sure you saw 3 people?" "Not just one." I nodded. 3, maybe more. One of them fired first. Hours passed before another deputy walked in, radio still clipped to his shoulder. "We found the truck," he said. My stomach tightened. He read from his notepad. "Engine's cold. Cab's empty. No sign of the driver." That alone wasn't what froze the room. It was what came next. "There's blood. Not much, but enough to tell someone got hurt. It starts near the passenger side and trails off into the field. Then it just stops. No footprints. No tire tracks. Just gone." He showed me a photo on his phone. A thin line of dark stains smeared through gravel, vanishing into knee-high grass. My mouth went dry. "What about the driver?" I asked. "Still missing," the deputy said. His phone and wallet were in the cab, even his keys. I walked slowly to the door and spoke again, my voice firmer. "You have the wrong house. There's no Lorraine here." Silence. Then, through the door, a low voice answered. She always let me in. She said I could come back when I was better. The doorknob turned slightly. Not enough to open, just enough to test. Every instinct screamed. I grabbed my phone, dialed 911, whispering into the receiver, "There's a man outside my door. He's trying to get in." The operator told me to stay calm and stay on the line. But when I checked the live feed again, he was gone. Or at least, I thought he was, until the motion alert chimed again. The camera showed him standing farther away now, on the sidewalk, staring up at my bedroom window. Sleep never came that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those silhouettes moving in the dark. The slow, deliberate footsteps in the gravel, the empty cab, the whisper on the CB. By dawn, I'd given up trying to rest. I packed up, got back behind the wheel, and told myself it was just another delivery. Another night. Another stretch of road. But something had changed. As I rolled eastward through the open plains, every shape on the horizon made me tense. Even a distant mailbox or road sign felt like a figure waiting just out of sight. The radio hissed occasionally, faint static, then silence. I told myself it was interference, just background noise. Still, my hand hovered near the mic every time it flickered. At one point, a convoy of trucks passed me going the other direction. Their drivers waved. Normal, casual. But when the last rig went by, I caught something odd. His hazard lights were blinking in a pattern. 3 short, 3 long, 3 short again. SOS. It could have been coincidence. Or not. By the time I reached Casper again, I was running on caffeine and nerves. I stopped at a diner near the edge of town, a quiet spot where truckers gather to swap stories. When I told one of the old drivers about the abandoned truck on 26, he went pale. "You're not the first," he said. "There's been others. Rigs found empty, engines still warm, no drivers. Always near that same stretch." I wanted to laugh it off, but the look in his eyes killed the joke. He leaned closer. "Next time you hear whispers on your CB," he said, "don't answer. It ain't a person." That night, heading back west on another haul, I kept the CB off. I drove in silence, the kind that presses on your ears until you think you'll go mad. The sky was clear, stars sharp like glass. My headlights cut through the emptiness. And then it happened again. Static broke through the silence. Only this time, the whisper was clearer. Closer. "Driver, why didn't you stop?" He told me to change my locks again. I did. But no new key could erase the feeling that I wasn't alone. That night, I sat awake at the kitchen table, every light on. I told myself it was over. The man was gone. The police had the evidence. But my body didn't believe it. My eyes kept flicking to the clock. At 11:17 p.m., the doorbell rang. I froze. The chime was soft, polite, like it belonged to someone who thought they still had permission to enter. I opened the camera feed. The porch was empty. Then, a blur of movement flashed past the edge of the frame. Someone was running. The motion alert blinked again. For a split second, the porch light caught movement, a dark blur cutting across the edge of the frame. Then nothing. My fingers trembled over the app controls. I switched on the floodlight. The yard erupted in white light. He was there. A man in a worn jacket, cap missing this time, sprinting toward the street. His stride was clumsy, desperate. The back of his coat flared open as he ran, and I caught the briefest glimpse of something smeared across the fabric, like dried mud or old blood. He didn't look back. He just kept running until the darkness swallowed him. I sat frozen, listening to my own heartbeat thudding through the walls. I wanted to believe that was the end, that the light had scared him away for good. But fear doesn't leave that easily. The next morning, an officer called me. They'd analyzed the flip phone found in the basement. "It hasn't been active for years," he said. "No SIM, no data. Looks like it died a long time ago." They hadn't found any usable fingerprints either. "Could be he was squatting here," the detective continued. "You moved into his comfort zone." Probably spooked him when you started living there. That word comfort zone stuck with me. The idea that someone could claim a home with nothing but their memory of it. It made my skin crawl. I changed every lock, installed window bars, even set a nightly alarm at 11 p.m. as a ritual. Not out of superstition, but out of habit. Safety felt like a routine I couldn't afford to skip. Days passed. Weeks. Nothing happened. No more letters, no more doorbell rings. I told myself it was over. But the house never felt quiet. The silence itself seemed to press against me, heavy, waiting. Every now and then, the mail slot would clack open, and for half a second I'd expect to see that familiar shaky handwriting again. Then one afternoon, a letter actually did arrive. No return address, just my name scrawled in the same uneven hand. My breath caught. I tore it open. Inside, one line. You changed the locks. One. The paper slipped from my fingers. My vision tunneled. I checked the camera feeds. Nothing on the porch, nothing by the fence. The street outside looked empty. But then I saw it. On the far edge of the yard, half hidden behind the trash bins. A man's cap. The same one I'd seen in the video. And next to it, written faintly on the concrete in what looked like charcoal. Still mine. After the letter came, I stopped pretending I felt safe. I taped the windows shut, pushed furniture against the doors, and slept with my phone in one hand. Every creak sounded like footsteps, every gust of wind like breathing. But fear only holds for so long before it turns into obsession. I kept asking myself the same question. Why 11 p.m.? That time wasn't random. It was ritual. Someone had lived by that clock. Him, or Lorraine, or both. I needed to know why. So, the next day, I went digging, literally. Behind the laundry room wall was a narrow crawl space, half sealed with old plywood. The inspector had called it utility access, but something about it had always felt off. That night, flashlight in hand, I pried the panel loose. The air inside was damp and cold, smelling faintly of mold and metal. Cobwebs clung to my sleeves as I crawled in. The beam of light cut across the dirt floor, revealing fragments of paper, crumpled receipts, cigarette butts, and an empty prescription bottle labeled Lorraine H. My stomach twisted. I pushed deeper. The space widened slightly at the far end, where I found something else, a small wooden crate, nailed shut. I hesitated, then pulled the lid free. Inside were photographs, dozens of them. Each one was taken inside this house. Same wallpaper, same furniture, but the faces were blurred, like someone had wiped them out with a thumb. In a few, I could make out a woman's silhouette sitting on the couch, a man standing by the window, watching her. On the back of one photo, scrawled in pencil, she said I could come back. My flashlight flickered. From somewhere above me, floorboards creaked. Once, then twice. I froze. Someone was walking through the house. My heart hammered as I crawled backward, trying not to make a sound. When I reached the opening, I killed the light and waited. The silence stretched thin until the faintest sound reached me. Tap, tap, tap. 3 slow knocks on the basement door. I held my breath. Whoever it was, they weren't trying to force their way in. They were waiting. After what felt like an hour, I crept upstairs, checked the doorbell camera. Nothing. But when I replayed the footage from 11:17 p.m., the camera had triggered for a single second, just long enough to catch the edge of a shadow moving inside the house. Not outside. Inside. I'd been looking for him on the porch, but he was already home. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that single frame of the shadow inside the house. The next morning, I walked through every room with my phone in record mode. Closets, attic hatch, crawl space doors, searching for any sign that someone else had been there. Everything looked normal. Too normal. Like the house had tidied itself overnight. Still, the air felt wrong. Heavy. Saturated with something unseen. By late afternoon, I called the detective who'd handled my case before. "You need to come back," I told him. "He's been inside." He arrived an hour later, calm but skeptical. We rechecked the locks. No damage, no scratches. Then he turned to me and said, if he had keys before, maybe he made a copy, but I'd already changed them twice. When he left, I decided to check the basement again. The crate of photographs was still there, but something had changed. The dirt under it looked freshly disturbed. The flashlight caught faint drag marks leading toward the far wall. I started digging. It didn't take long to find what I wished I had. About a foot beneath the surface, the spade struck metal. I cleared the soil away until the edge of a box emerged. A tin container, old and rusted. My fingers trembled as I pried it open. Inside were letters, hundreds of them, each folded neatly. The top one read, in the same shaky handwriting as the envelopes from before, he promised he'd stop. Another said, he's not better. Please don't let him in. And beneath them, a Polaroid. A woman standing in front of this very house, smiling weakly. A man beside her, his arm draped over her shoulders. His eyes were unmistakable. It was the man from the camera footage. So this was Jean. Lorraine's ghost wasn't haunting me. Her past was. I sat there, frozen, the letters trembling in my hands. The truth settled like ice in my veins. The warnings were never meant for Lorraine. They were for me. The air shifted behind me, carrying the faintest scent of earth and metal. Then, a sound, barely there but real. A long exhale. I turned. In the far corner, where the crawl space met the wall, a thin crack had formed in the concrete. And from that crack, dust trickled softly, like something breathing beneath it. I backed away, tripping over the toolbox. My phone slipped from my hand, landing face up in the dirt. The screen glowed. Motion detected. Living room. I looked toward the stairs. Footsteps. Slow. Steady. Coming down. The basement steps groaned one by one. Whoever, or whatever, was coming down moved slowly, like it already knew I wasn't going anywhere. My chest tightened. I couldn't even reach for my phone. It lay face down in the dirt, camera still glowing faintly. Another step creaked. Then another. I held my breath, forcing my body to stay still. The air was thick with dust, and something else, something sour, like sweat trapped in old fabric. The beam from my fallen flashlight trembled across the wall, catching the edge of a boot at the top of the stairs. A voice followed. Soft, broken, familiar. She used to wait right there, every night. My blood went cold. He descended another step, and I finally saw his face under the faint light. A gaunt, hollow man, skin pale from time spent in the dark. His eyes were sunken but sharp, fixed straight on me like he'd been rehearsing this meeting for years. I knocked, he said, voice cracking, but she never answered. Thought maybe she was sick. I didn't mean to scare you. I swallowed hard. You can't be here, I whispered. He tilted his head slightly, as if the words confused him. This is my house, he murmured. She said I could come back when I got better. Jean, everything in me screamed to run, but something about his stillness, his calm, rooted me. He didn't lunge or shout. He just stood there, trembling, eyes darting toward the shadowed corner behind me. I left her something, he said suddenly. Down there. My flashlight flickered as I followed his gaze. The cracked concrete. The faint dust trail. The letters. He took another step down, boots scraping on the concrete. She was supposed to open them when I came back. I shook my head. Lorraine moved away years ago. You can't keep coming here. His expression shifted. Confusion, then anger, then something worse. No, he said softly. She's here. She has to be. Before I could move, he lunged, not toward me, but toward the far wall. His hands clawed at the crack in the concrete, tearing at the loose dust like an animal. She's right here, he shouted. She said she'd wait. The sound of his nails scraping against stone was unbearable. Then, something inside the wall gave way. A hollow thud echoed through the basement, followed by a smell that hit me like a wave of rot and earth. Jean froze. His voice dropped to a whisper. Lorraine. A low groan came from within the wall. Not from him. From behind it. For a heartbeat, everything was still. The only sound was Gene's ragged breathing as he stared at the wall, his fingers trembling over the fissure he'd torn open. Dust fell in slow, weightless clouds, drifting between us like mist. Then the wall groaned again, low, wet, like air escaping from something sealed too long. The smell hit harder this time, sweet, metallic, unmistakably wrong. Gene dropped to his knees, pressing his ear to the crack. "Lorraine," he whispered, voice trembling. "I told you I'd come back." Every instinct screamed at me to run, but my legs wouldn't move. Instead, I found myself watching in horror as he began clawing at the concrete with his bare hands. Nails tore, blood streaked gray dust. Chunks of plaster fell away, revealing not pipes or wiring, but old, rotted wood beneath. He kept digging. "She said she forgave me," he muttered. "Said she'd wait right here." Then his hand broke through the final layer. The hollow space behind the wall collapsed, spilling out fragments of fabric, splintered boards, and something pale tangled in them. For a second, I thought it was a mannequin. Then I saw the hair. Long gray, matted. Gene froze, his hand inches away from the thing he'd uncovered. His lips parted, but no sound came out. The air turned electric, vibrating with the quiet hum of horror settling into its place. "She waited," he whispered. "She really did." I stumbled backward while rising in my throat. It wasn't possible. She'd been dead for years, maybe before I even bought the house. Gene reached forward, fingertips brushing the corpse's sleeve with the tenderness of a man touching something holy. "You see," he said softly, almost pleading. "She didn't leave. She never left me." The smell was suffocating now. My vision blurred, and I finally bolted for the stairs. But as I reached the top, I heard it. A second voice. Faint, fragile, coming from the hole. "Don't let him back in." I stopped cold. My brain refused to process it. Jean was sobbing below, rocking back and forth beside the crumbled wall, whispering her name again and again. "Lorraine, I'm home. I'm home." The lights flickered once, twice, then went out completely. I stood in pitch darkness, my breath loud in my ears. The air seemed to pulse with the rhythm of someone else's breathing. When my phone screen lit up automatically, the camera app had opened by itself, showing the basement feed. In the night vision glow, Gene was no longer alone. Something stood behind him. The power cut left the whole house breathing in silence. No hum from the fridge, no tick from the clock, just the low creak of shifting air through the floorboards. I stood frozen, staring at my phone screen, watching the live feed glow in the dark. Gene was still on the basement floor, his face half lit by the phone's eerie green tint. He rocked gently, whispering something I couldn't make out. But what made my skin crawl wasn't him. It was the shape behind him. It wasn't fully visible, just a shimmer at first, like heat rising off asphalt. But slowly, it began to take form. A pale outline of a figure standing impossibly close, its head tilted, hair floating slightly, as if underwater. My heart hammered so hard I thought it would shake the phone out of my hand. "Gene?" I whispered to the screen, like an idiot trying to warn a ghost about another ghost. He froze. Then, slowly, he turned his head toward the camera. Not toward her, toward me. "You shouldn't be watching," he said softly. The phone flickered, static tearing across the feed. For a second, the image warped, and when it came back, Gene was gone. The thing behind him wasn't. It had moved closer to the lens. The shape was clearer now. A woman's face, lips cracked and colorless, eyes blank white. Her mouth opened slightly, like she was mouthing words the camera couldn't capture. Then, tap, tap, tap. My front door. The sound jolted me. I dropped the phone, its screen cracking on the floor. The knocking came again, slow, patient, like someone testing the timing of my fear. I didn't dare look through the peephole. I just backed away until my shoulders hit the wall. From the basement came a muffled thud, then another, the sound of something heavy dragging. I forced myself to pick up the phone. The screen was spiderwebbed but still glowing. The feed was dark now, no basement, no figure. But in the faint reflection on the glass, I saw something move behind me. A shadow. I spun around. Nothing there. The power surged back on with a violent click. Every light in the house flickered to life. The silence shattered with the familiar ding of my doorbell, 11:17 p.m. I looked toward the front door. On the floor, where the mail slot hung open, a single envelope had been pushed through. My name was scrawled across the front in that same shaky hand. I picked it up, hands trembling. Inside, one sentence. "You let him in." The letter fell from my hands. My eyes locked on those 4 words, "You let him in." I didn't remember unlocking the door. I didn't remember opening it at all. But when I turned to look, the deadbolt was turned halfway, like someone had started to twist it and stopped. The air in the hallway had changed. It wasn't cold exactly. It was thick, humming faintly, like the house itself was holding its breath. The porch light flickered through the frosted glass, and for a moment, I could swear I saw a shadow crossing. Slow, deliberate, watching. "Gene," I whispered, though I knew it wasn't him anymore. No answer. Then, a sound from the basement. A single heavy thump, followed by another. Something dragging. I grabbed the nearest thing I could use as a weapon, a fireplace poker, and moved toward the stairs. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Motion detected. Basement. My throat went dry. I opened the feed. The camera showed the bottom of the stairs. Empty. Then, a faint shuffle. The lens flickered. For half a second, I saw something impossible. A woman standing in the center of the frame, her head bowed, arms hanging stiff at her sides. Behind her, Jean knelt on the ground, unmoving, as if frozen mid-prayer. The screen distorted again, static swallowing the image, and then she was gone. But the sound wasn't. It was coming from under my feet. A slow scraping against the floorboards, like fingernails dragging wood. The sound circled the room, steady and rhythmic, before stopping directly beneath me. The bulb above me buzzed, dimmed, then went out completely. Darkness swallowed the hall. In that blackness, something whispered my name. Not from the door, not from the basement, from inside the walls. "Why did you stay?" My breath hitched. "You're not supposed to be here," I said, my voice shaking. She said that too. The whisper came closer, the words overlapping. First male, then female, then something in between. She said we could stay together. I bolted for the kitchen, slamming the basement door shut behind me. I pressed my back to it, trembling, listening. For a moment, everything was silent. Then came the knock. From the other side of the door. Slow, hollow, measured. Knock, knock, knock. And then a voice, quiet, calm, almost tender. "Don't lock me out again." The knocking stopped, but the silence that followed was worse. It wasn't still, it listened. Every heartbeat echoed off the kitchen tiles. My palms were slick with sweat as I gripped the poker tighter, waiting for another sound. Then, the basement door handle twitched. Once, twice. A slow, careful turn, as though whoever was on the other side wasn't forcing their way in, but testing if they were allowed. I stepped back. "Go away," I shouted, though my voice cracked halfway. "I'm calling the police." The handle froze. Then a man's voice, faint, hoarse, floated through the wood. "You already did." They never listen. It wasn't a threat. It was disappointment, like a man being shut out of his own home. I backed up until I hit the kitchen counter. My phone buzzed again, the basement camera feed still rolling. I glanced down at the screen, and my stomach dropped. The door I was staring at was open on the feed. I looked up, still closed. Looked back down. The feed showed it swinging wider. And behind it, Gene stood in the doorway, staring directly into the camera. But his eyes, they weren't his anymore. They were glassy, hollow, reflecting a faint shimmer of movement behind him. Something moved in the dark, the pale figure of a woman, her neck bent at an unnatural angle, her lips parting in a slow, wet grin. The feed crackled with static. "She forgave me," Jean whispered. My phone slipped from my hand as the basement door in front of me creaked open, just an inch. A rush of air spilled out, cold and damp. I didn't wait. I swung the poker hard, slamming the door shut again and jamming a chair under the handle. Then I ran for the front door. Locked. The deadbolt wouldn't turn. It was like someone was holding it from the other side. My lungs burned. I yanked harder, but the handle only shuddered and stayed locked in place. Then I heard it. Footsteps on the basement stairs. Slow, dragging, uneven. "Please," I whispered. "Just leave me alone." A pause. Then the same voice, now right behind the door, spoke again. She said that too. The light above me flickered once, twice, then went out completely. The last thing I saw before the dark swallowed everything was the reflection in the window glass. Two figures standing behind me. One was Jean, the other wore my face. When the lights went out, everything fell into a silence that didn't belong to night. It was too still, too thick, like the house itself was waiting for me to breathe before it did. I didn't move. Couldn't. The reflection in the window, Jean's hollow eyes beside my own, burned into my mind even as the darkness swallowed the room whole. Somewhere behind me, the basement door creaked. A low, dragging shuffle crossed the kitchen floor. I gripped the poker tighter, holding it like a lifeline. "Stay back," I shouted, but my voice came out thin, breaking halfway through. The footsteps stopped. Then, a whisper, "It's your house now. Ours too." The words slithered through the dark, followed by the soft click of the mail slot opening. A single envelope slid through, gliding across the floor until it brushed my shoe. Hands shaking, I bent down and picked it up. No name this time, just one word written in that familiar, trembling hand. "Welcome." The floorboards beneath me shuddered, once, like the pulse of something alive. Then came another voice, this one faint, female. She didn't lock the door. My breath froze. "Lorraine." A cold wind brushed my neck. "He came back. You let him in." I spun, swinging the poker wildly through the dark. It hit nothing but air. The sound that followed wasn't human. A deep, resonant groan that made the walls themselves tremble. The house was speaking. The lights flared back to life for just a second, enough for me to see everything at once. Jean, standing beside the table, eyes lifeless. Lorraine's pale form, half translucent, behind him. And between them, something else, something shaped like me, its face blurred, its smile too wide to be real. I staggered backward, knocking over a chair. My phone buzzed again, the motion alert. On the screen, living room, 11:17 p.m. The feed showed me, standing in the kitchen, still, staring at the door. Except I wasn't holding the phone. The camera blinked once, static tearing through the image, and then the figure on screen smiled. The lights died again. This time, they didn't come back. It's been 3 years since I bought this house. People still ask why I never sold it, why I still live alone. I tell them I like the quiet. Sometimes, around 11 p.m., the doorbell rings just once, soft, polite. I don't open it. I don't have to, because I already know who's on the other side. And somewhere beneath the floor, the house breathes, slow, steady, patient, like it's waiting for someone else to move in.